On the 12th consecutive night of protests in Seattle, hundreds of people stormed City Hall and demanded the resignation of Mayor Jenny Durkan. The protesters were reportedly allowed access to the building by a Seattle City Council member.
Hey, fist up, y'all! Fist up! Jacob Fry, we have a yes or no question for you. Yes or no, will you commit to defunding Minneapolis Police Department?
I do not support the vote out of this movie.
All right, get the fuck out of here! Go! Get out of here!
Right here. Here it is, right here. There you go. This is the white man. Get these white women and get these white people a hand, man.
Being racist, you were being offensive. One day you fucked up. That one time fucking up is enough. You should step down!
Weeks after a racially charged incident caused some unrest at the Yale campus, a popular instructor there is stepping down.
Well, this all started back at Halloween when the associate master, Erica Christakis, sent out an email to students saying we need to be a little less politically correct.
This is Erica Christakis, early childhood lecturer at Yale. In the morning of October 30, 2015, she received an email from Yale's Intercultural Affairs Committee about Halloween costumes. The email states, Yale is a community that values free expression as well as inclusivity. Halloween is also unfortunately a time when normal sensitivity can be forgotten. Are you wearing a funny historical, cultural or religious costume? We are One Yale. We encourage everyone to be safe. Erica decided to reply. Pretend play is the foundation of most cognitive tasks. We want to encourage that, not constrain it. I wonder, and I'm not trying to be provocative, is there no room anymore for a child to be obnoxious? Or yes, offensive?
After an email went out from Associate Master Erica Christakis, they didn't feel safe on the Yale campus.
Mass protests broke out. Erica's husband Nicholas, a famous Yale professor, faced the students.
The message that you sent proclaiming that cultural appropriation on Halloween is totally permissible is hurtful. You would understand that, and I think that you can look at the effect that those actions had on these students and many other students on this campus.
Look at me. Yes. Your experiences will never connect to mine. Empathy is not necessary for you to understand that you're wrong. Even if nobody's ever been racist to you, because they can't be racist to you, that doesn't mean that you can just act like you're not being racist.
I have a vision of ourselves that unites our common humanity. Okay? So I believe, even though I'm not like you in the sense of my superficial appearance, that I can sit down and talk to you and understand your predicament.
Do you even
I've
know who she
apologized
is?
for causing pain. I was looking for the right words.
Guys, you have created space for violence.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that.
You don't get a choice here.
I disagree that I've fostered violence. I disagree with that statement.
Can I just really quickly?
Yes. What is your name?
You don't need to bend down.
I'm not bending. What's your name?
I do not want to shake your hand. I do not respect you.
I don't hear that.
I'm looking at the smirk in your face and I'm disgusted.
Okay.
I am sick. And I'm sick watching them argue with you after we've been standing outside literally for at least 5 to 6 hours. Which I am sick looking at you. I am disgusted watching Lex argue with you. You were not listening. You were disgusting.
I could definitely understand. She's gotten threats over the past few weeks. We've had people go up to her saying, like, I hope you don't sleep at night.
After more than 1,000 calls for her resignation, Erica decided to step down. She went to work at a daycare. It was a win for the social justice warriors.
Put it in front of the camera as much as I want. I'm not touching you. I can speak to you just like this as much as I want to. You're hearing it right
A generation of mostly young adults demands radical social change. They're angry. But why? And with whom? And how does this match with their claim for inclusivity and diversity? What do they want? Where did they suddenly come from? Do they have a point? And what's their goal? To answer these questions and understand what social justice warriors, a form of radical progressives, really want, we'll have to dive deeply into their heads. Now, if that's too heavy thought for you to bear, here is 5 seconds of Click Away Rabbit.
My name is Greg and I am a white gay.
My name is Sel and I am black and a girl.
I'm Asian.
Jewish. As a ginger.
I'm fat.
At the absolute core of radical progressives' worldview lies the categorization of people into groups. Black and white, Latinos and Asians, gay and straight, women and men, abled and disabled, and so on, so on, so on, so on. A person is no longer seen as an individual character, but rather a fixed element of a certain group. A group of victims.
Homophobia is still real. I still deal with it all the time.
Being misgendered happens countless times in a day, and that builds up really quickly, and it can really be difficult for a person to hear over and over again because it invalidates your identity.
You know, we know about society and kind of oppressive.
Obvious oppression.
Yeah.
The victims believe they are being oppressed by the privileged part of society. This is a scale of 2 parts. On the bottom are the victim groups. The top part are the privileged ones, the oppressors, the ones to fight against the masters of the universe. They've been controlling society for so long that they're in debt now, in debt with the victim groups.
It was not your turn, sir. It has never been your fucking turn for a long time. You've had your turn. You had the opportunity to apologize to these people. You had it, and I'm sick that they're still waiting for it because you're not going to give it to them. I'm not going to live my life knowing that you are going to be the disgusting man you were 20 seconds ago, a minute ago, 30 minutes ago, an hour ago, a week ago, and onward.
I was in a class this week called Intro to Latino Studies, and we learned about institutionalized racism, and a white male walked out of the room because he has the privilege, the luxury to not know what everybody around you, look around you, all these people face on a daily basis.
The higher one's position in the scale of victims, and the more groups one inhabits, the more right one has to speak.
Is that you can have multiple identities within one identity. You're made up of so many identities, and sometimes they cross over and they inform each other. The thing about it is that based on the mix of traits that you have, some people are going to be more oppressed and some people are going to be more privileged. That's just the way it is.
So a black, gay, disabled woman will have more right to speak than a white, straight male.
Coming into terms with my gender queer identity has been one of the most challenging but also rewarding things that I've done.
Laverne Cox kind of famously said, misgendering a trans person is an act of violence. And it is. It's an act of psychological violence. It's a denial of somebody's personhood and a complete refusal to acknowledge their identity, whether intentional or not.
So accidentally getting somebody's identity wrong is already an act of violence. But how is that even possible? Well, at the core of this belief of privileged and oppressed ones lies the belief that the system is already a violent state that is keeping people suppressed. And it's time to start to change that.
The first step is they say that the validity or invalidity of an argument can be judged solely by the ethnic, sexual, racial, or cultural identity of the person making the argument. The second step is that they claim those who say otherwise are engaging in what they call verbal violence. And the final step is they conclude that physical violence is sometimes justified in order to stop such verbal violence.
This ideology is especially active at universities, so what's only the right thing to do when an oppressor is coming to talk at your university?
Hello, darling.
Sir, please,
do you need some help?
Sir,
do you
please.
Need some help?
Sir, please.
The efforts to prevent people from speaking go pretty far. Hundreds have been stopped from speaking in the last couple of years, mostly conservative right-wing or libertarian speakers. To prevent what they call hate speech, half of the university students now agree with disrupting speakers, and 1 in 5 university students agree with using violence to prevent people from speaking. The line between actual violence and verbal violence has been blurred for social justice warriors. In fact, for some of them there is actually no difference anymore, because hate speech can make you physically ill, as some in the social sciences now claim. And there is one kind of hate speech they dislike the most. They are called facts.
You are using your statistics for your own political agenda, and that's your prerogative.
I'm citing statistics because they're true.
I'm talking about the fact that I'm faculty here. I also support our protester in the back.
What do you support specifically? Do you think that anti-immigrant rhetoric is violent free speech?
Yes, because of the reasons
you think that
I'm
speech
talking
is
about.
violence?
No, I think that
That's what that sign says.
The conversation that you're having is oppressive.
So I am oppressing people by what I'm doing. So I am exerting violence on people by my speech. That's what the sign says, and that's what you just said.
It contributes to.
And the protester is saying that's exactly what I'm doing, and she's saying that's exactly what her sign means. So that means that you, a faculty member at an American public university, paid for by taxpayer dollars, are conflating speech with violence.
Yes. Speech can be violent. What you are saying contributes to systemic racism in this country.
The line "your statistics" or "your facts" is being used quite often these days. And facts can be very hurtful.
Hearing someone say she, will happen within 2 seconds of me entering, which doesn't happen about any of my other identities. They're not going to be like, oh, you straight person, that doesn't happen. But automatically someone will make assumptions about gender which translate into pronouns, which mean that I will hear over and over again people saying something about my identity which is false.
Mistaking one's gender or wearing the wrong Halloween costume are both microaggressions.
If a straight white male, or anybody else who ranks lower on the victimhood scale, says something contrary to the viewpoint of the higher-ranking intersectionality identity, that person has engaged in a microaggression. As NYU social psychologist Jonathan Haidt writes, microaggressions are small actions or word choices that seem on their face to have no malicious intent, but that are thought of as a kind of violence nonetheless. You don't have to actively say anything insulting to microaggress. Somebody merely needs to take offense.
Microaggressions are critical in social justice warrior lingo because they mean the oppressive group is targeting the oppressed ones with a behavioral or verbal offense. So it's only logical that on universities, students demand to be protected from this hate speech by having safe spaces.
We are fortunate that Penn has many places where we can go to talk and get help with whatever is on our minds.
You've probably heard of CAPS and the Student Health Service, which have kind and trained staffs. In this video, we introduce you to 6 additional positive places at Penn, our cultural resource centers.
The Penn Women's Center, GIC, LGBT Center, La Casa Latina, Maku, and Patch are special.
What happened here? How did we go from this?
It's been said that we've been revolutionaries and all this sort of thing. The traditional view, the university is a community of scholars, of faculty and students who bring the hard light of free inquiry to bear upon important matters in the sciences.
To this.
This is my home. I live up there. My master's there, my dean. I love my college. And I can't say that anymore because it's not a home. It is no longer a safe space for me.
Well, something with millennials.
Kids born after 1985, they don't get driver's licenses as much. They don't drink as much. They don't go out on dates. They don't have sex as much. What are they doing? They're sitting at home on their devices, talking with each other. And this seems to be changing social development. And so it's when this generation first enters college campuses, and 2013, that's when all this new attitude about speech comes in.
With an immune system never really tested, the demand not to be offended started growing, and free speech became under attack. According to a 2018 report by the Foundation for Universal Rights and Education, the vast majority of students at America's top universities surrender their right to free speech the moment they step on campus. And a special free speech zone is their only option. But what if, despite all these measures, somebody still commits a microaggression against you? What if you're triggered and so emotional where can you go? Today is still funded by the government. They search for soldiers of justice. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, maybe you can hire the bias response team.
A bias response team is now in place at the University of Michigan. It encourages students to report on their peers. This isn't the only one. More than 200 American campuses have established similar administrative offices.
There's actually an online portal on the University of Michigan website where you can report speech, not even that you have been subject to, but that you have overheard. So maybe you and I are having a conversation about a TV show we saw last night. Somebody walks by, they think, I don't like that word, and they can go and they can log in and they can make an report. And then we'll have to go and we'll be brought before the bias response team, which is made up of administrators and campus police, and we'll have to explain ourselves. And
you have to talk to the police if someone reports you for saying something unapproved.
There's a team of people.
So what if you say, you know what, I'm not interested in this kind of thing, and I don't want to talk to you, and buzz off?
Well, you will be subject to punishments, which might include remediation. I think that they call it restorative justice. So that you might have to go to cultural appropriation training or some other kind of diversity education, unconscious bias training, which I hear is a thing these days.
The outrage, the chaos, the social unrest, microaggressions, spying on each other. Where is this all leading? What's the end goal? Well,
heteropatriarchy. It's like straight men ruling everything.
I can't fucking stand the white heteropatriarchy, and then sometimes I'm sucking a white dick. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. I'm buying guns.
the patriarchy, the male-dominated phallocentric society, was heavily used by Jacques Derrida, a French philosopher and one of the important figures of the French postmodernists from the 1960s.
I don't think that you can understand the current situation properly without considering the role that postmodernism plays in this, because postmodernism, in many ways, especially as it's played out politically, is the new skin that the old Marxism now inhabits. It really came into its vogue in the 1970s after classic Marxism, especially of the economic type, had been so thoroughly discredited that no one but an absolute reprobate could support it publicly anymore. And what happened was that they played a sleight of hand game in some sense and rebranded themselves under the postmodern guise. And that's where identity politics came from. And then that spread like wildfire from France, especially into the US, through Yale University, through the English department there, and then everywhere. And you couldn't be a Marxist and claim that you were a human being by the end of the 1960s. And so they started to play a sleight of hand, and instead of pitting the proletariat, the working class, against the bourgeoisie, they started to pit the oppressor, the oppressed against the oppressor. And that opened up the avenue to identifying any number of groups as oppressed and oppressor, and to continue the same narrative under a different name. It was no longer specifically about economics. It was about power. And everything to the postmodernists is about power. And that's actually why they're so dangerous, because if you're engaged in a discussion with someone who believes in nothing but power, all they are motivated to do is to accrue all the power to them. Because what else is there? There's no logic, there's no investigation, there's no negotiation, there's no dialogue, there's no discussion, there's no meeting of minds and consensus. There's power. And we've been publicly funding extremely radical postmodern leftist thinkers who are hell-bent on demolishing the fundamental substructure of Western civilization. And that's no paranoid delusion. That's their self-admitted goal.
That's why they don't believe in debate. They don't believe in logic and arguments. Society needs to be brought down and become totally equal.
that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
MLK's dream of looking at individual character over group thinking didn't make it into the 2000s. In fact, right now we're looking at race and categories more than ever.
So the president of the American Sociological Association, Edward Bonilla Silva, is a leading proponent of whiteness studies, and he has coined a concept called colorblind racism. So his idea or theory is that color blindness, that is Martin Luther King's vision of not judging people by the color of their skin, he considers that to be racist and considers that to be a barrier to a truly racially equal society.
If someone asked you what you thought about a particular group of people, you could probably answer them, right? Most of us believe that we understand our own brains. We believe that we know how we see the world. But what if our brains were holding on to a whole other set of subconscious opinions? Opinions that were just under the surface.
Implicit bias tests became quite a thing.
Lester, I think implicit bias is a problem for everyone, not just police. I think, unfortunately, too many of us in our great country jump to conclusions about each other. And therefore, I think we need all of us to be asking hard questions about, why am I feeling this way?
Starbucks, Google, the New York Times, many other companies, millions of people were subject to this test. Were they secretly racist?
This is mind games. I can feel my heartbeat going faster and faster and faster.
I don't know why I have to think so hard to do this. Got my results.
Your automatic preference may be described as slight, moderate, strong, or little to no preference.
Your data suggests a slight automatic preference for African American compared to European American.
Your data suggests a strong automatic preference for European American compared to African American.
It later turned out there is no scientific evidence that this test works at all, that it's impossible to show unconscious bias. But who cares if you don't believe in science anyway? Actually, they do believe in science sometimes, when the conclusion matches their utopia.
Is the light okay in here? Since approximately June of 2017, I, along with 2 other concerned academics, Peter Boghossian and Helen Pluckrose, have been writing intentionally broken academic papers and submitting them to highly respected journals in fields that study gender, race, sexuality, and similar topics. We did this to expose a political corruption that's taken hold of the university. By this point, several of these papers have been accepted in highly respected journals, and one that claims that dog humping incidents can be taken as evidence of rape culture has been officially honored as excellent scholarship.
The reviewers are worried that we didn't respect the dog's privacy. That's the concern. We respected the channel.
But don't let that lead you to believe that we're not addressing a serious problem. The problem is how these topics are being studied right now. A culture has developed in which only certain conclusions are allowed, like those that make whiteness and masculinity problematic. The fields we're concerned about put social grievances ahead of objective truth. So as a simple summary, we call the problem Grievance Studies.
The best I can tap into is that there's this kind of like religious architecture in their mind where privilege is sin, privilege is evil, and then they've identified education as the place where it has to be fixed. So you can come up with these really nasty arguments like, well, let's put white kids in chains on the floor at school as an educational opportunity. And if you frame it in terms of overcoming privilege, and then you frame their resistance, that they won't want this to happen to them, that they would complain about this. If you frame that in terms of, oh, they only complain about that because they're privileged and they can't handle it because their privilege made them weak, then it's right in.
Some teachers do really need no convincing.
Many of the laws existing, we should be violating those laws. We're taught to get up and pledge allegiance to the flag every single day, a flag that's not really representative of everybody who's standing up in that room.
How do you actually, as a teacher in a classroom, kind of promote ideas of Marxism or to kind of begin to fight for those changes? I think, part of it is that particularly at a high school level or an elementary school level, you have to be careful,
Yeah, you have to be really careful as a Marxist teacher these days, but not as careful as when you're an artist using your free speech. In any battle, but especially in a power struggle, it's very important to show you're on the good side of the argument, to virtual signal, and show your fellow activists that you're still a good one.
To please repeat after me. On behalf of myself and on behalf of my country. To you and all African Americans. From the beginning of our nation's history. In honor of your ancestors and on behalf of your children. Please hear this from my heart. I apologize. Please forgive us.
I now understand racism as a system, as a deeply embedded system, a system that our country was founded on and that all our institutions were created out of. And every institution reinforces this system. And it's a system of unequal power.
Equality of outcome. Forced equality. Diversity.
So the problem with the fractionation by group identity is that it's endless. There's no way of ensuring equality across groups because there's an infinite number of groups. You can fragment group identity all the way down to the level of the individual, which is exactly what you should do, which is what we already did in the West. We figured, well, the ultimate diverse population is a population of individuals, so you let the individuals sort it out. No, we're going to replace that with group. Well, what that means for the bloody social activists is that they'll be able to play this game forever because you can continually fractionate group identity ad nauseum, and so the system will never be equal. And you can bloody well be sure that as we implement social policy to make sure that all outcomes are equal, that the amount of space that you personally are going to have to maneuver in is going to shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. We've already seen that happen in many societies. You'd think we would learn from the 20th century.
He's not my hero. I'm a communist, you idiot. You didn't plan any protests against him, did you?
It's not uncommon these days for young people to call themselves communists. Recent study shows 50% of university students are in favor of socialism, despite radical socialist theory having been tried and tested multiple times. Soviet Union, Cambodia, China. Wealth was distributed, private property eliminated. One's gotta wonder if the young communists right now really know their history quite well. Yet here we are in 2020.
Thank you, comrade. Okay, is there a speaker against name, chapter, pronouns?
Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
A piece of art viewed by some as confusing, dark, even satanic, has been removed from its spot alongside Florida Avenue in Lakeland.
Now new at 6 o'clock, we spoke exclusively with a local activist who removed a controversial publicly funded art display.
The battle for an equal multiverse society is difficult to win. A momentum was needed, and a momentum arrived.
Let him leave!
After the horrendous murder by policemen of the black American George Floyd, global riots broke out. Progressive activists saw their chance, and Black Lives Matter took over of some streets.
After a week-long standoff, the police have abandoned a precinct. It's now called the Seattle People Department. It used to be Seattle Police Department in the downtown area. And now protesters have claimed it and the neighborhood around it, calling it an autonomous zone.
Can destruction of society lead to the radical social changes social justice warriors want to see? Finally, they could show their theory would work in autonomous zones where the police surrendered.
We have heard that there are armed people patrolling the streets near 12th and Pine. Of course, this is very concerning, especially because we don't know who these people are. We've also received report that these armed people may be demanding payment from business owners in exchange for some of that protection.
No, bro. Go then. Stop, bro. Go then, bro. Stop. Hey, I'm not trying to aid. Get your fucking hands off me, bro. Hey, yo, hey. Hey, bro.
Do you understand that the word dismantle or police free also makes some people nervous? For instance, what if in the middle of the night my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that that comes from a place of privilege. I know that that comes from a place of privilege. I know that that comes from a place of privilege. I know that that comes from a place of privilege because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality where calling the police may mean more harm is done. And so in the very immediate, we have to lean into whatever changes we can make in our existing police department. So the groundwork is laid already in Minneapolis for us to build on that, to learn from folks around the world, but really also to listen to our community and put those community voices front and center as we build up those systems even further.
White people, I had the good fortune to go to Standing Rock for a little bit, and I was there right before all the white people showed up. There was probably like 5,000 Native people. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life. Thank you. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm from a Native community, and I still have yet to experience anything like that, where a wonderful friend of mine likes to say that we weren't free yet, but we could see what it looked like. And it was wonderful. It was a beautiful place. And then over a weekend, white people showed up, and you fucked it all up. You fucked it all up so fucking fast. It was unbelievable how quickly you decided that you needed to help. And you know what you fucking did? You colonized the goddamn movement. You fucking took charge. You decided that you would help with the groceries. You decided that you would help with the protest. You decided that you needed to be in the fucking front. And you know what you did? You sucked the life out of us. Because you don't know, even in trying to help, you don't know how to do anything but consume. And I hardly can blame you because I don't know when your soul died, but it was a long time ago.
Will they manage to build up the system even further? Of this spontaneous movement?
Uncles getting photos taken of you. Police are going to be like, perfect, we can prosecute these look how violent they are. Right? Not that we're not, but we need to hide it.
They were getting this tradecraft from someone else, someone with much more experience, someone who did this for a living.
Rose City Antifa holds required lectures for prospecting members in secret at, in other words, bookstore before they open. And as part of their security culture, they require us to put our phones in the bathroom next door. This bathroom is not only away from the main room where the lecture is taking place, but also has a fan that muffles any sound from the room.
whole goal of this, right, is to get out there and do dangerous things as safely as possible.
How violent is Antifa or RCA in particular?
Practice things like an eye gouge. It takes very little pressure to injure someone's eyes.
They do not hesitate to either push back or incite some kind of violence. In our classes and in our meetings, before we do any sort of demonstration or black bloc, we talk about weapons detail and what we carry and what we should have. What is black bloc? Well, this is black bloc right now. The term is used to a tactic in which individuals conceal their identity to look uniform so that no one can be identified in an act of a crime.
Will society become more equal, as they so deeply desire?
The popular TV show Cops officially canceled. The Paramount Network made the announcement today, just 4 days after the show was pulled from the schedule.
And if you ask me, I can't even believe that Cops lasted this long. I mean, this was always such a weird show. Who comes home from a long day at work and is like, I want to unwind, let me watch some broke shirtless guys get their lives destroyed. It's the only way I can get some sleep. And although this might seem like a frivolous thing, like removing Cops from TV, I'll be honest, I think this is a move in the right direction.
Now, one of the BBC's most successful television comedies, Little Britain, starring David Walliams and Matt Lucas, has been removed from all streaming platforms because of concerns about the way that characters from different ethnic backgrounds are portrayed.
And that's the distinction, as the historian David Olusoga's talked about, between remembering history as something that belongs in the past and memorialisation, celebrating, revering that past in the here and now. So for the BBC, you talk about the implications. On one side of the ledger, you've got the danger of offending some people, which really matters if you're funded by a universal licence fee, all the reputational damage that can flow from that. And then there's also the issue that if we are facing a sort of cultural paradigm shift, the BBC probably wants to be in the vanguard of that, leading.
They think that it's not them that needs to change. They don't have to adjust to society's rules. It's the society itself that needs to change its culture. And I think that's the kind of cultural revolution that we're going through.
It's enough. It's incredibly important that everybody in a free society be able to interact as equals. And when Jews are wrong, you have to be able to say, hey, Jews, you're wrong. When whites are wrong, when women are wrong, we have to be able to say women are wrong. This idea that this concept of I am more oppressed, therefore I am more correct, and my lived experience is not understandable by any other person other than me. We're gonna have to tackle this bull head on. There is nothing I want less than to tell the least advantaged person, a person sold into slavery as a child, sexual slavery, crippled, a person who has known only deprivation. I don't want to have to tell that person, you're wrong. But if that person says that 2 times 3 equals a chicken, that person is wrong. I don't care how trans they are.